Welcome back to the Sacred Arts Academy, where we talk about all things from the practical to the sacred. Today, we have an amazing topic on family and systemic constellations, and we have Christian Lolies, who's an esteemed certified facilitator in family constellations and systemic coaching, who brings a compassionate approach to the process. With extensive training under leading experts in the field, Christian creates a safe and nurturing environment for participants to explore their family constellations and embark on a journey of healing and discovery. So, I wanted to start off with, can you tell us a little bit, what is family constellations and systemic constellations?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just give you a little bit of context of where family constellations has come from. And it's quite a remarkable story. Um, and it's really one of the fastest growing healing modalities as well in the Western psychology right now. There was a man, his name is Bert Hellinger, a German man, and he he's one of the main guys who's developed it in Western psychology. But he was a man that in World War II, his brother was a soldier and died, and he joined the church, and on one of his missions, he was sent to South Africa to spend time with the Zulu, and he was there trying to convince them of on his mission with the church, and really they convinced him of their ways. And one of their ways of healing in the tribe was to call out upon ancestors anytime there were issues within the tribe. And this man came from the Western world and more science background, and obviously faith-based with the Christian church mission he was on, but he saw it work over and over, and it really resonated with him, and he brought this work back, and then he developed it for the Western psychology. And so Bert Hellinger is seen as one of the developers and founders of this modality in Western psychology. But the originations of this were already there with a lot of the indigenous tribes all over the world in reality. And so what family constellations actually does is that it recognizes that we're really part of many systems that came before us. But there are many family systems that were joined together that came before us, and really we are an extension of all the systems that came before us. And all the experiences are passed on, all the traumas are passed on through DNA, through epigenetics, and through behaviors over time. And once we understand that we're really an extension of that, it helps us understand why certain things reappear in our lives, and why there's certain things that we struggle with. And so in essence, that's where family constellations comes from. And I did a lot of modalities in my inquiry for my personal healing journey, and towards the end, I came across family constellations, and for me, it was the missing link, and it resonated straight away, and it was profoundly impactful on my life, and it's something that I wanted to share with others.
Mm, yeah, it's really interesting because I just discovered family constellations probably within the last 8 months, and I have to agree with you. You know, I have a master's in psychology, and I've tried a lot of healing modalities, and it does tie together a lot of the healing that I needed or that I was working on already. And I didn't even think that I needed family constellations until I actually sat in a session, and it was so powerful. So I'm curious about your own personal journey, and how did you discover family and systemic constellations as that missing link?
Yeah, and I touched on it. My story didn't start with me. It went way back. My I'm I was born in Germany. My dad is German and my mother is Irish. And on the German side of my family, you know, was a lot of trauma and fallouts from World War One, World War Two. And on the Irish side, from the, you know, the famine and the centuries of oppression that they fought against. And you know, it's not unusual. Most families have intergenerational traumatic events that are passed on. And um, my early on living in a poor neighborhood in Germany and abusive households, my escape was soccer and team sport, and my heart got closed off at a very early age, and uh, I needed something to funnel my perpetrator and victim energy through without hurting anybody, and soccer became my escape. Um, until that didn't work out, and in desperation of not finding love at home, I turned to drugs. We moved to Ireland, and I turned to drugs in the streets, and until I overdosed, and barely finished high school. And from there, then I found my first full-time job, and started gaining confidence again. And but again, my heart was closed off, and I needed, it was a funnel for me to funnel my you know, my perpetrator and victim energy into, because I was not in touch really with my authenticity. So I got successful, and I had a 11-year corporate career, ending at actually 11 years at Amazon corporate, which brought me to the US. And towards the very end of my corporate career, I had a really terrible concussion. I was in Argentina, Buenos Aires, and I was sitting with friends in a cafe, and I just hit my head off a table, and it was there where, you know, I really woke up, and I needed to understand, because all my anxieties that I ever had were multiplied, and I couldn't be around people anymore. My I had multiple panic attacks a day, and it was there. Then I was like, okay, I really need to understand all my anxieties. I need to understand the nervous system. I need to understand the brain. And so I started studying, really getting into psychology, and I did all the modalities. You know, I was lucky at that time. I'd built up some wealth and resources, and I could afford it. And I did cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma therapy. I went out into the mountains for 11 days straight to be with, you know, nature, and find solitude. And um, I joined Tony Robbins community, which was more on the performance coaching side. And you know, and the performance coaching helped me a little bit, but it was a little bit, there was a split in between me. My inner child was the victim, and some of my egos were funneling the perpetrator energy. And the performance coaching was really creating a wider gap inside me, because the perpetrator energy was getting bigger, and the victim was getting even pushed away even more. So my inner child, I was completely dissociated from my heart and my inner child. And I found some really great trauma therapists that I worked with. She was amazing, and she does. Her name is Divya Taurek, and she does ecstatic dancing, and she introduced me to a water therapy, which was called Watsu. Have you heard of Watsu?
No, I haven't.
It's an amazing water therapy which mimics the womb. So
Mm.
you're basically in a pool of water, which is body temperature, with a therapist. And this therapist I worked with, her name is Chintam. She's amazing. She's based in California, and she basically therapist moves you through the warm water, and you learn to surrender to the water.
Mm.
And I did that for like 4 days at a time. And you know, the feminine therapist that was with me, obviously, you know, when they take you through that water, they kind of align with your breathing, they put you underwater, take you back up, and you learn to surrender and to trust. And I had some really magnificent releases from this therapy, where I redreamt my birth and so forth. And so you know, all of this was great, and I was really finding my heart again. And in that time I was doing a lot of journaling, and I was like, ancestors, something with ancestors, ancestors, ancestors. Like you've probably found it, you've come across as well now. And yeah, and then I was at a keynote event in Mexico, a Tony Robbins event, and there was a keynote speaker. Her name is Michelle Blackner, and she's an amazing family constellations facilitator. Um, she's based here in the US and in New York, and she spoke about family constellations that completely resonated with me. It was like I'd done it before, I'd heard about it before, and um, you know, honestly, she was offering sessions the next day, and I didn't go because I had some resistance. I didn't know what would come up, and in hindsight, I know now that when you have resistance something, that's where the big unlock is. But so anyway, so fate would have it. 2 months later, I would meet her again, and I went to one of her sessions. She facilitated a healing circle, and I went to it. And in between one of the breaks, I was just observing. I wasn't going to take part yet, but I was just observing. In between one of the breaks, I went up to her and I introduced myself, and we had a little bit of a pause, and I just tears just started coming down my eyes. I just had a reckoning that that everything I had ever gone through, all my childhood tribulations, everything, corporate career, everything was setting me up for this moment. And I did a constellation the next day, and it was amazing for me. It's helped me so much. It was really the missing link for really healing a lot of things for me inside me. And I immediately knew this was something that I end up training with her, and now I help people overcome their intergenerational trauma,
Mm.
leveraging my experience and family constellations.
That's incredible. I mean, it sounds like you really went through it, right? You had your major awakening and then you went on and did a lot of different modalities that helped you realize that the heart is really where it was at, and the inner child work. And can you tell us a little bit about like how long was this journey for you?
The family constellations journey or in general
In
the
general, like your
yeah
whole awakening. I think that'll
the whole
be really
awakening.
helpful.
Yeah. So I had this head injury 5.5 years ago now. And I did, after the head injury, I went back to Amazon, and I got a new in working in the corporate world, and I got a new job. And um uh and then things didn't work out there for me. I had like a big failure at one of the jobs that I took on. It was a really toxic environment that I was in, and it was that failure again that where I was like, okay, like just the patterns coming up
Yeah.
that's I can't get away from. um and so that's when I really turned inwards. And it took me to get to the inner child. I think around the trauma therapy, and the trauma therapy to really help me. It took me about really 3-4 years to get to find somebody who I could open up with. I'd spent some time with different therapists, and really great ones. um but sometimes there's certain people that facilitate and hold a space for you, that allows the parts of you that are hiding somewhere to reappear, and 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 also then nurture that space that allows that part to then unfold. And then also there's that perpetrator. I had to train the perpetrator too to you know understand that there are different ways now.
Yeah, for
A-
sure.
and it's all through the heart, as you mentioned that, right? So I had to find room in the heart for both sides.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
You know, I'm when it comes to family and systemic constellation on a deeper level, we talk about like activating your inner alchemist, right? And maybe even some of the clairs like clairvoyance, claircognizance. Can you elaborate on how it kind of took you to the next level, made you a lot more intuitive? How was this a transformative experience for you?
Yeah, I realized I always in family constellations I got certified very quickly, and Michelle Bleckner, my teacher, I knew early on, it just all made sense to me, and I thought like everything that was being spoken to me, I didn't have to think about it. It was just I had this clear cognizance about it, like downloads that I already knew in a way, and I got certified very, very quickly, and started being able to help clients very quickly on this. And I realized that, we all have clairvoyancy, some access to clairvoyancy inside us. Um, and I always had it because growing up, I even as a child, I would point out things that weren't right in the family, and but it was the truth hurts, of course, and so I was told things that made me doubt myself, and so I really pushed that part away, and I grew up in environments where it just wasn't accepted to clairvoyancy or that type of spirituality just was shunned, and yeah, even in soccer it showed up, right? Like there's like telepathic communication of seeing things before they unfold, and so they were always there. Or even in the corporate career, I always knew things. I didn't have the data to show to prove it a lot of times, but so it was always there, and but it was clear to me that in family constellations that the skill, this connection I have to that, it's really there to help people.
Yeah, for sure. Um, how do you think that family constellation or even systemic constellations has helped you kind of grow that intuition? Are you leaning more into the clairs or what is your point of view on that?
Hmm. And for me, it's as a facilitator of healing, it's really about uh, maintaining a good relationship with the field about what comes up, and it's really a surrendering for me. Like if I if I try to utilize the Claire skills, if I try to control it in a way, it doesn't work. It's really a surrender to the field, and then it comes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Can you share any specific examples or experiences where you witnessed the profound impact of family and systemic constellation?
Yeah, absolutely. I had um, I had a client recently that that was struggling a lot about. I mean, before I go there, what I want to say about family constellation, I think what is really amazing is that um, you can do constellations on a one-to-one basis, and the one-to-one works really, really well. But in a group session, in a group healing circle, it is really amazing because the people that show up to the groups, they don't know each other a lot of times, but it's by no coincidences that these specific people are showing up for each other, and we're all really mirrors to each other, and the fact is we heal in relation. We heal in relation to one another, and that's why one of the reasons why family constellations is so impactful, because on a one-to-one session, a lot of psychologists, I heard Thomas Hubel, I mentioned this recently, like that in groups you can resolve some of these issues much quicker than sometimes, in a one-to-one session it would take 7 sessions, but in a group session, um, it can show up much quicker. But in family constellations, you have a subject and you have the facilitator, and then you have the circle, and the subject will tell the facilitator what they want to work on. And then what we will do is we will ask the subject to pick representatives in the circle, pick people who shall represent some of your ancestors. And usually we start with the mom and dad first, and then work our way back with the other ancestors. And so the subject will pick representatives, and then they will have people representing, and the people who are representing, they will start feeling things, and they will start positioning themselves within the circle. And so the subject is sitting there, and they can see, on a 3D, really it's 5-dimensional, because these people, they can see the physical, the space they're occupying, but they can also see the energy that these people are feeling. And a lot of times we can see energy that the representatives are feeling that maybe in our real lives we weren't able to see, because also my mother was hiding some of her despair that she was going through, or trying to hide it. But here now in this circle where people are representing something, they're not hiding it, because they're just feeling what they're feeling. And so then people can start seeing things from a completely different perspective. And that observation then allows, to make peace, and to also accept everything the way it is without judgment. And that's the key, really. It's the accepting without judgment, because, you know, once we judge, we place ourselves above. And when we do that, we're against the harmony of the universe. So, that's a really, those are some profound experiences that I often see in the circles show up.
Yeah, I love that you presence that the key is acceptance. And doing the family constellation for me allowed me to see that I was actually sitting in the wrong seat, that I had taken like a parent role or whatever the case may be, right? And doing that exercise or doing um that session with that modality really like helps you understand like, oh, I have been standing in judgment. Oh, I didn't see things in that way, right? It gives you a slightly different perspective,
Yeah,
which is really powerful.
it is. It is. And, you, you didn't take that role because you wanted it to,
Right.
right? But what happens then over time is that we've taken that role, and we're stuck in a way, and when we're in a different role, we're not living for more authenticity.
Right.
And so oftentimes, when people are in a different, and I was in a completely different roles, um, people will feel stuck, and they will also feel like there's no space, and they're suffocating in a way.
Yes. That's a great description. Absolutely, because I think oftentimes we don't even realize we've taken a different role. It's a role that was given to us for whatever situation, whatever happened. And then it becomes part of your identity, which is not your authentic self, which is really interesting. And, I think for me, when I first heard about this, it's like, oh, well, I know who I am, but then it wasn't until, and you're right about the resistance that you talked about earlier, right? When you resist something that really is like it's trying to show you something. And I resisted it for a really long time. And when I finally did it, I was like, Oh, that was so easy. Like that modality was so easy, but the slight shift in perspective like allowed me to open up to so much healing. It was incredible.
Yeah, and that's amazing about this modality too, because a facilitator will often then ask you to step into your role physically. And you know what? And all of a sudden you can feel that energy, that space. And it's like, oh my God. And it doesn't, it's a that's it's the beginning. It doesn't end there. So I just, because sometimes we do afterwards try to go back to our comfort zone where we were for such a long time. So it's important to also distinguish that. But yeah, it's amazing that where you
Yeah.
can feel.
It's a conscious effort. It's also like I like the description of space because that's exactly the word. Like, wow, like, whoa, I've been living out of authenticity for so long. Um, and this simple change of perspective has allowed me to come back into my body, come back into alignment with who I am and what my role is, not just like in the world, but in my own family,
Yeah,
which is really it's really interesting.
yeah, yeah.
I am curious, what drew you to actively facilitate? Because one thing is receiving the modality, and another thing is to hold space for people in both the family and systemic constellation.
I just felt that it was it, that this was, I had done this before, and there's a talent within me in terms of, I could immediately tell, like I can talk to people and immediately tell the energy, right? And I can immediately tell where it's coming from, and all of it, the usually as a facilitator, there's the three things that we look at. We look at order. Are people in the right places? Because if people are not in the right places, they can't receive the love. And then energy, what is the energy? And then facts, like stories or things that have happened. And it's just an eighth uh you know clear cognizance that I really recognized with this. And I was like, well, it's I have to use it. I have to give it back. And so it's really from my heart, and something I love. So yeah.
How does it complement or enhance the other modalities that you have encountered?
Yeah, and I leverage a lot of the other modalities, of course, that I picked up along the way. You know, it's a lot of I've noticed a lot of therapists, psychologists started adopting and also using family constellations and adding it to their repertoire. And
Yeah.
I think it's super smart, because the traditional like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, which is great. And it, uses, some people use a little bit of gestalt with it, and in family constellations there's a lot of gestalt. So a lot of them are kind of coming together. But I think we live in a hyper self in the individual world. And I think that's where family constellations is the game changer, because it recognizes that that we're really an extension of all the systems that we come from, and that we're part of, or that we were part of growing up. And so it's a bigger view. I also think that with being in the fifth dimension, where we have time and space. um Family constellations allows you to go back in time for a moment and come back into the present. And we do that in traditional therapy anyway, where we go back to the inner child and see where they're stuck, and then try to get the inner child to move forward again. But in family constellations, we do that on a wider spectrum in a way, using ancestors and and people that are channeling ancestors in a way, are acting as mirrors, because we're all mirrors, we're all connected. And yeah, let me tell you a story, what might be interesting to you and your listeners, that happened to me. That I was in a constellation, and I was Michelle Bleckner was actually facilitating it, and I was there, for training purposes and observing. And one of her subjects was she lives in the US, and is from the Ukraine, and she asked me to represent um, her grandfather. And I didn't know any backstory about her grandfather, but it turned out her grandfather served for the Russian army, and he was in charge of watching one of the prisoner of war camps in Siberia. And so she asked me to be him, and then obviously it all unfolded, and I was keeping in tune with the role, and just channeling the information or the energy that I was feeling, without trying to solve anything or act, or just really just being present, but with the energy. And as this was unfolding, you know it's amazing, because my great grandfather on the German side was held captive in Siberia in a prisoner of war camp. So, I could feel the other side, so I could feel the victim and perpetrator at the same time. And who knows, they may have faced each other in that camp, almost 100 years ago. And so, these type of encounters, happen a lot in kind of encounters can happen in constellations. And it's not always that it's that close, but there's some reconciliation happening, whether it's the victim perpetrator, or so many other dualities where reconciliation can happen. And so, it's I think that's one of the kind of the magic of it.
Wow. That's that's incredible. You mentioned earlier we're all mirrors, right? And it sounds like even though the session wasn't directly for you, it also did help you. It also did heal parts of you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was a huge healing for me, because that was some of the the perpetrator energy that was still flowing through the family.
Yeah.
And so I needed to heal that within me, not anybody else. But there was still remnants of that somewhere. And that perpetrator energy was turned against me. Because I couldn't really, didn't want to hurt people. Early on, I'd turned that perpetrator energy against me, and so that was a huge healing for me. And in family constellations, even if you're there to observe, even if you're not a subject and you're picked as a representative, it can be profoundly impactful. Because again, like, we're all mirrors to each other, and it's not by chance that we have 90% of our behaviors are from our unconscious.
Yeah, it's true. Um, so when you facilitate, whether it's family or systemic, well, first of all, let me back up. How do you know whether you need a family constellation session or a systemic constellation session?
Yeah, and so I distinguished it to, like, so family constellations is really to work on your, whatever happened in your family, the relationships that are broken down in your family, that are in within you, of course, they start showing up as mirrors, reflections, and relationships in our lives, right? So broken down relationships with your mother or with your father or with your siblings. And usually, siblings don't fight usually. If siblings are fighting, it points to that there's an entanglement with one of the parents.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so any of those broken down relationships will then show up with women or men in your life. We start creating those type of relationships unconsciously in a way to resolve them. And so if you have any broken down relationships with people, then family constellations can be magical. It can be really profound, have a profound impact. For systemic, I help organizations really, and it's slightly different. In family systems, you have to order, the dad, the mother, the ancestors, they all are first because they became before the kids and they're bigger. And, so that there's that hierarchy in that system. And it's a universal hierarchy because it's the precedence of who came first that should be really respected. And in organizations or business, it works similarly that there's some type of hierarchy where there's the founder, and he should be always respected as who comes first, and then there's different departments. You have the product team, you have the sales team, you have after sales. There's that precedence, and sometimes if that's not respected, there's chaos and there's these broken down relationships that can occur within the company. And so yeah, for organizations, I help organizations basically. There's group dynamics that unfold, in families or in any group. Unfortunately, in society, the first thing that people will do as a survival is exclude somebody.
Mm.
It's very unfortunate, but it's something that people do out of survival. My dad ran away from home when he was 16. His family excluded him, and they did it out of survival. They were in survival, and they excluded him, and then they felt better for a while, right? But it doesn't work on a long-term basis because whatever you exclude becomes your shadow,
Yeah.
right? Like we see it in these nations trying to exclude other nations, and then these terrorists groups start forming, right? It doesn't work, unfortunately. Like, not unfortunately, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so that's the distinction there between family and systemic. So if you have broken down relationships, I really recommend family constellations.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. And so, are you able to facilitate? Is this only in person, or are you able to facilitate online, like via Zoom, or how does that work?
Um, yes, I can do online. I do online as well, and I do in person. I'm currently based in Seattle, but I'm relocating in the next month.
Okay.
Uh, but people can reach me online on systemiclens.com. And yeah, I do also have uh, right now I have monthly family online circles that people of course can join. And yeah, I mean, I'd be happy for people who are listening on this call to provide a promo code for people that are listening.
Awesome.
And this promo code will allow people to join one of those monthly online sessions at 100% discount.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate
Yeah,
you offering that. And we'll post the code down below in the description for anybody that's interested in joining and is curious
yeah.
about family constellations. Is there anything that people should know about you know, uh how to prepare for a session or any challenges that might come up during a session?
Yeah, I think one to prepare, I think it's helpful, and it's not necessary, but it's helpful if people can kind of understand a little bit about their ancestors' journey. you know, and like doing a genogram. You know, I think it within the family, you know, when I started doing some research, I found out a lot of information, and it's important that we don't show up as like a kind of police investigator. You know, it's really coming from a place of non-judgment of like, hey, I'm just curious of, you know, where my ancestors come from. And I think that's really helpful because, you know, once we know where our ancestors, there's patterns that occur, and things will start making sense once we understand some of our ancestors' journeys. A lot of things are repeated in different ways, and we're so loyal. Humans are so loyal. We're so unconsciously loyal, and a lot of the addictions or destructive patterns are loyalties to uh, people or ancestors that we want to be close to that were maybe excluded, or old parts of ourselves. And those are loyalties that to grow that we need to reintegrate in a more constructive way. So that's a good preparation. What to expect? Yeah, I think with any therapy, any if there's trauma involved, you know, you're visiting places that you know, that are protected, and that protection, underneath the protection is vulnerability. And you know that once that we find a way to ask the protective layers to step aside for a moment, and we unravel the vulnerability, that there is an after period a lot of times where the protective side comes in a little bit stronger for a moment, for a couple of days potentially, you know. So it's really nurturing that, and you know, feeling good about feeling safe about, you know, that the things that hurt us in the past are not are now gone, and that we can continue in that path of nurturing the part that was once vulnerable.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any events or things that are coming up? I know you shared the circle,
Yeah.
or anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today.
No, that's what I have the monthly event. People can find me on systemiclens.com, and yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to hear from people, whether it's by email or people who want to set up a call, and or join one of our monthly online healing circles. It'd be a pleasure to meet you.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your journey with us and your wisdom and all of your offerings. We really appreciate it. For everyone that's out there, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and subscribe and let us know what you thought in the comments down below. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you next week. So when you join my Patreon, you get the uncut version of each episode, and we go a lot deeper. For example, on this one, at the end, I talk about my recent awakening and my relation to the Black Jaguar. You get to catch the conversations before and after with each guest, and you get so many bonus types of content. So just for $3 a month, you support the podcast, and you help us move forward with interviewing more guests and learning on this journey. So join my Patreon to support.